Deep in the Guyanese jungle, the rain washes over the remains of an isolated settlement. Over 900 people died here. When we look at the aftermath of Jonestown, the immediate human reaction is to distance ourselves, to assume we would have seen the danger. The tragedy resulted from a methodical psychological architecture designed to dismantle an individual's ability to resist. It relied on the same mechanisms of trust and community that define most healthy human relationships. To understand the origin of that architecture, we have to look at America in the 1950s. Poverty, racial segregation, and a profound lack of social safety nets left millions of people in a state of chronic isolation, looking for a lifeline. Jim Jones positioned himself as that lifeline. In an era of deep division, his People's Temple offered integrated schools, they provided communal kitchens, and free medical care. These early successes provided the moral capital he would eventually spend on his followers' lives. Lethal manipulation begins by weaponizing genuine hope. It starts by fulfilling a person's desperate, valid need to belong to something larger than themselves. Once that trust was absolute, Jones began isolating the group. He convinced his followers that the outside world was a landscape of hatred, and that he was the only individual capable of protecting them. Control moved from the pulpit into the home. Jones dictated marriages, seized personal assets, and utilized public shaming. Anyone who voiced a doubt was forced to stand before the congregation and endure hours of humiliation until they recanted. We often wonder why people don't just walk away as the abuse escalates. This is the sunk cost fallacy in its most extreme form. Humans are hardwired to stick with a situation if they feel they have already invested too much to lose. Members had surrendered their life savings, cut off their relatives, and destroyed their reputations in the outside world. Admitting Jones was a fraud meant admitting their entire life's sacrifice was a waste. By the time the danger became undeniable, the followers were effectively paralyzed by the weight of everything they had already given up. In 1977, as journalists began investigating reports of financial fraud and physical beatings, Jones triggered a mass exodus to South America. He moved nearly 1,000 people to a remote clearing in the Guyanese jungle. Jonestown was located miles from the nearest road, hundreds of miles from the American border, and completely cut off from any independent information. The settlement operated under a system of mandatory labor and 24-hour surveillance. Jones's voice played over loudspeakers day and night, even while the followers slept, ensuring his narrative was the only one they ever heard. To further break individual will, Jones enforced a process of identity erasure. Parents were forced to hand over authority of their children to the group. By severing the natural family bond, he made the cult the sole source of a child's survival. Physical isolation was the primary tool for a larger goal, the destruction of independent reality. Without news, letters, or outside friends, the followers eventually lost the ability to trust their own perceptions. The outside world finally broke through when Congressman Leo Ryan visited the camp with a team of journalists. Jones forced his followers to perform a facade of communal joy, but the tension was visible. During the visit, a few members managed to secretly pass handwritten notes to the reporters, pleading for a way out. The mask of a happy society had slipped. As the congressman's party prepared to leave the following afternoon, several families joined them, attempting to reach the airstrip and fly home. At the jungle airstrip, Jones's armed guards intercepted the group. They opened fire on the departing planes, killing Congressman Ryan and 4 others in a deliberate act of lethal escalation. The violence at the airstrip ended the movement's humanitarian pretensions. For the hundreds remaining in the jungle, the settlement had become a fortified enclosure with no remaining path to the outside world. On the final night, Jones gathered the community at the central pavilion. Despite being hundreds strong, the crowd did not rise up against the small number of armed guards. This lack of resistance is a result of years of sleep deprivation and managed terror, leading to a state called learned helplessness. After hitting enough psychological barriers, the mind eventually stops looking for an exit entirely. Jones convinced the parents that the American government was coming to torture their families, presenting the poison as a merciful alternative. They watched as the children died first. By the time it was their turn, the followers had been conditioned to believe that self-destruction was their only remaining form of agency. The victims' internal logic had been so thoroughly rebuilt that death appeared to be a logical act of protection. Their ability to perceive an alternative had been systematically erased over a decade of control. The massacre shocked the world and turned the phrase "drinking the Kool-Aid" into a permanent warning about the dangers of blind obedience. The specific vulnerabilities Jones exploited, loneliness, social inequality, and a search for purpose, remain present in every modern society. Our only defense is the active practice of critical thinking. Maintaining outside perspectives and questioning absolute authority are the only ways to prevent an ideology from overriding our sense of reality. No leader or group should ever be permitted to become an individual's absolute source of truth. When you lose the right to question, you lose